Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, I'll wait a couple minutes for students to show up. Today, we're going to start with the meditation. We're going to go through the Sankofa, and then we're going to go into the talk for today, which is on Black infant health, and address in that talk not just infant mortality, but maternal mortality. We're also going to go through the questions that were assigned for the introduction in chapter 1, and we'll also talk about the answers to the test. Okay, so we'll start at exactly 12:05. So did you want to ask me questions now? Do you want that on the recording, or do you not want that on the recording?
It don't matter. I got type 2 diabetes, and I've been sick for a while, and it's getting worse. And with this COVID thing, it's just kind of like I feel like I done got a setback. I was doing better. Like I said, I got out and started taking classes at a couple of places. And I was feeling great right before the COVID thing, and then everything got shut down. And now I'm back, feel like I'm a prisoner in my apartment again. And so it's starting to affect me again, health-wise and spirit-wise and all of that kind of stuff. And I want to do better and feel better,
Stress and depression are bad on everyone, but they're particularly bad on people of color. And adding another layer to it, age,
right,
makes it really, really bad for yourself. So I understand that we do have to shelter in place, but do you feel comfortable enough, like maybe walking around the block?
I'll have to.
Times when maybe there aren't too many people outside.
I guess I'll have to start putting that in my thing. Right before this all happened, I started getting back into the gym a little bit, but those are the worst places that you want to go now. So
yeah, well, we don't want to allow the things that we can't do to stop the things that we can do. Always, getting outside each day and being in the sunshine is excellent for your health. The exercise obviously is great for your health. We need to at least see people and wave if we can, even if you can't be in close proximity and have a long conversation with them. But human interaction, aside from what we're doing here on the computer, is extremely important. Wow. It is imperative to our ability to live.
Socialization.
Socialization, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, also with diabetes, drinking enough water is also very, very important to your health. It not only helps the kidneys, but it helps your liver, your pancreas, your heart. So drinking enough water is also very, very important. And if you are, whether you're active or sedentary, you need to avoid sugar.
All right. I'm doing a lot of mineral water. Is that a good thing, or should I?
Of course it is.
Okay, mineral water is good. Okay.
Of course it is.
Sparkling water, yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest drinking both flat and, if you like sparkling water, maybe do half and half, because sparkling water tends to pull the minerals from your bones.
Oh, okay.
That's not something we want to do.
All right, great.
So we want to limit. You don't want to make your primary source of water be sparkling water.
I guess it's the bubbles. I can't do the soda, and so I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. No. Do it sometime.
Right.
Enjoy it sometime. Just don't do it to exclusion.
Okay, right.
And one of the great things about living here in the Bay Area is we have our reservoirs are the Hetch Hetchy reservoirs, and it's some of the best water in the country.
That's what I understand. Yeah.
It is naturally fluoridated and it's clean, so it's okay to drink tap water.
Oh, tap water is fine here?
Oh, it's wonderful here.
Okay. All right. I thought that they had tested it and it was kind of dirty. That was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I drank
Well, I'm saying in comparison to,
the rest of the country.
yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, even as close as Nevada, Nevada's water is nasty. Even parts of LA, nasty.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
They fight. Yeah. That's been a water. That's been a political battle for a while about us sending water down there.
yeah, so there's always a certain amount of particulate in any water from anywhere.
Okay. Well.
So, the idea that it wouldn't have any
Right.
is untrue.
Okay.
It will have some, but ours is cleaner
All right. Okay.
than other parts of the country.
Well. Okay.
Makes
Well,
sense.
thank you. It does.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
I mean, not free, but it's free in
A lot cheaper than
buying bottled water.
there you go.
You know, I like hint water. I like a little taste in my water, but I don't like sugary anything. So,
Good.
so
All right.
I understand that.
All right.
Okay, so
Thank you.
you're welcome. We have 2 more people that have joined us. We're going to go ahead and start the meditation.
Okay.
So, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Welcome to the Daily Comb. Today, I'd like to talk about how to treat thoughts when they arise in practice. Begin by finding a comfortable position and closing your eyes. Straighten your spine as best as you can to keep you alert and attentive. Allow your heart and chest to lift, but let your shoulders and arms relax. And just begin to feel yourself settling in. Let go of any unnecessary holding or gripping. And gently bring your awareness to the breath. Taking a few deep inhales and exhales. Feeling your lungs expand and contract. And then allow the breath to soften so it becomes relaxed and natural. And without changing the way you're breathing, become aware of the very beginning of your inhale. Follow your in-breath until it naturally ends and the exhale begins. And then stay with your entire out-breath until it transforms again into an inhale. And whenever you notice your mind has drifted into thinking, planning, or worrying, silently repeat the word thinking, thinking, and gently come back to your breath. And when thoughts arise, note what's happening. Again, saying the words, thinking, thinking. Just notice each thought without judgment and let it go. This is a practice where we repeatedly observe and allow. Observe and allow. And when you're ready, return to the breath 100 times if need be. Follow the inhale all the way to the very end. And once it transforms into an exhale, follow it all the way to its completion. And now, gently relax your attention. Whether our practice consists of following the breath or of being aware of physical sensations, thoughts will inevitably arise during meditation. And when they do, we might be tempted to scrutinize and analyze them. But one of the goals of meditation is to acknowledge our thoughts without engaging with them. You see, having a thought in itself isn't problematic, but getting caught up in one can be. So instead of losing ourselves in stories and distractions, we learn to let thoughts pass, like clouds floating by in the big blue sky. So the next time you notice a thought arise during meditation, remember that you can choose not to let it take over. Simply notice your mind being a mind, label the thought as thinking, and patiently return to your practice again and again. And for us overthinkers, this is an especially important effort. We often get stuck on anxious or worried thoughts, looping them over and over in our mind. The goal is to acknowledge a thought as it arises and then let it go. This prevents thoughts from consuming us and leads to a spacious, peaceful state of mind. As the Zen proverb goes, you can't help that birds will fly over your head, but you can stop them from building nests in your hair. And as we near the end of our session, come back to your body, come back to the room, feel your feet on the ground, and open your eyes. I hope you enjoyed today's Daily Calm. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Okay, how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Good. How you doing, Nikisha?
Good, it's a nice day out. Not too hot, not too cold. Perfect weather, really sunny.
Right.
So I like to sit on my porch sometimes in these days.
Yeah. It's a beautiful day. I've been out, had a walk this morning. I'm really, really happy about that. Okay.
Yeah, always the best.
How are you all doing with your sleep challenge? Hmm?
I'm getting used to it, at least being acknowledging of it. I don't know if I've done it thoroughly. I haven't completed 8 hours of sleep this week, and that's bad, but at least I'm acknowledging.
Yeah. It's hard to do. Or actually it feels different because of this COVID. However, I want to go ahead and walk through that assignment just in case there's anyone that has questions about it. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, let me put that down. All right, let me share my screen. All right. So here is the 2-week sleep challenge. It started Monday and it goes through July 5th. And it states, or it asks first, were you ever told sleep is important? Without good sleep, health suffers. Our sleep requirement is dictated by our age and health. For instance, children and teens require 8 to 10 hours per night, whereas senior adults may function well on 5 to 6 hours per night. Sleep allows everyone's body to heal and repair the heart and blood vessels. Therefore, when someone is chronically sleep deprived, their risks of heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, hypertension, and strokes increase dramatically. People of color are afflicted with these chronic diseases the most. Oftentimes, our problem getting 8 hours of sleep involves environment and personal needs being met. And some of those contributors that impede our ability to get a good night's sleep are temperature, as we're now in summer, and so often when it's warm at night, people cannot sleep. Sleep areas should be dark and free from noise. That's just something you have to make an adjustment for, get used to, plan for if that's not currently something that you do. Many people sleep with a light on, a night light, their cell phones next to them, a TV on, and those things actually impede your ability to get good sleep. Try to go to bed at the same time each night if possible. I provided a journal here, which I'll show you in just a second, to journal the times you wake up and go to bed. I would also want you to journal your morning mood, because you may not be aware of how sleep affects you. So if you get 8 hours, what is your mood? Or if you get 4 hours, what is your mood? I bet they're different. Avoid naps. That's part of the challenge. it's hard to force yourself to get 8 hours if you're breaking your sleep up during the day. And breaking it up, research has found naps are helpful if you have to drive or do something like that. Otherwise, it's important to make sure you get enough sleep at night so your body functions well throughout the whole day. And here's the other thing. I understand that the challenge actually crosses the holiday, 4th of July. So I'm not going to ask you to modify your sleep habits for that night, because if you want to party, party. You know, do so safely and wash your hands and wear a mask and all that stuff, but party and do whatever it is you want to do. That's important. I'm going to do a new share and share my, here we go. Share this. Let me do a new screen share. All right, can you see this? The sleep challenge form?
Yes.
Okay, so again, on the form, there's a column for the time that you wake up, the time that you go to bed, what your mood is, the number of sleep hours you got, and then an area for you to make any comments. The legend down below, energetic, happy, relaxed, tired, sad, mad, sick. If I'm assuming that covers most of what you might feel in the morning, but if you have something other than the moods that are indicated here to describe your mood, please use that, okay? All right, questions on those things so far? All right.
Will we
Go ahead.
will we still receive credit if we don't always make 8 hours of sleep?
Of course, it's your analysis and
Okay.
the fact that you did it. Because just because it's a sign doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And if you got 5 hours a night, does that mean you flunk? No. You know, that's kind of ridiculous.
So, so it's just an assignment?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Didn't you see points next to it?
No, I did. I really didn't get into it, but I've been having sleep problems for a while now.
Okay, well, it started on Monday.
All right.
So if you pull it up today, you can go back and
kind of fill it in.
catch up. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. So my Sankofa that I do each week, you may not yet understand the importance of it, but I want you to understand the importance of it. Give me just a second there. So, all right, let me just walk through it and then I'll explain why this is important. Okay, in case you didn't see this last week, I'll just explain. Sankofa comes from the Akan tribe in Ghana. It means one must return to the past in order to move forward. The colorful bird with its head turned backwards while its feet face forward, carrying a precious egg in its mouth, is one of the Sankofa symbols. Sankofa will be highlighted throughout this course, so you'll see a PowerPoint each week. It's important to make note of the information in these Sankofas for your own knowledge. You're not going to be tested on this in the class, but believe me, in life, you're going to be tested on some of these things. So it's important to know, okay? Okay, black codes. We talked about black codes in the reading for last week, but black codes are laws to restrict the movement and freedom of freed men and was enacted in 1865 in Mississippi. Okay. Ramon Carrillo is an academic, a public health advocate, a neurosurgeon, neurobiologist, and physician. In 1949, Ramon became Argentina's first Minister of Health. He held this position until 1954. He is considered a pioneer in brain cell research, which he conducted in the 1930s and 40s. As a neurobiologist, Carrillo developed tomography and described symptoms of several diseases such as Carrillo's disease, which is chronic hypertension plus severe headaches. And the Argentine government declared Ramon in 2006 the year of honor of Ramon Carrillo for his contributions. All right. Did you know that Santa Claus, the real Santa Claus, is Black? The original? Nicholas, or Saint Nicholas, was born in what is now known as Turkey's southern coast in a village called Patara. And he was born wealthy and religious. He came to believe that he was to give what he could to the poor. His parents died when he was young. Afterwards, he took all his inheritance to help the sick and the poor and continued following the words of Jesus and the Christian faith. Under Emperor Constantine's rule, he and other fathers created what we know today as the standard of Christian doctrine. The name Santa Claus comes from a dialect of Dutch and is from the word Santa Claus, which means Saint Nicholas.
42 principles.
Yeah. Okay, and the Mayat. The Mayat is also very important to know about. It's an ancient Egyptian goddess who represented truth, morality, balance, and justice. And the foundations, and they were the foundations of ancient Egyptian civilization. And she was born around 2375 BCE. Ancient Egyptians believed she was the judge on who would enter the afterlife, and she weighed their soul against her feather of truth to determine that. The earliest writings that mention the Mayat date back to more than 2,300 years ago to the Old Kingdom of Egypt. She was viewed as the model of human behavior, and it was common knowledge that humans who were in tune with her spirit would live well. The ancient Egyptians believed Mayat bound everything together, making people, the world, and the universe indestructible. Questions or comments about any of that information?
Well, okay, we talked about St. Nicholas, and then we talked about the principles of Mayat. And the principles of Mayat is a lot older than the Christian Bible. So and the fact that St. Nicholas kind of like helped put together the Bible, that whole thing kind of comes from the African perspective. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's kind of interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. So I'm also going to go into our talk for today. Which has to do with Black infant health. Okay. All right, so health disparities. We talked about this in the chapter, but here is some information from the perspective of Black infant health. Health disparities affecting African American women and babies appear to be less dependent on age, economic status, or education than for women of other racial or ethnic groups. Poor birth outcomes persist even when African American women have a pregnancy at an optimal age, have high income, or are well educated. African American mothers are nearly 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white mothers. And African American babies are twice as likely to be born with a low birth weight, or what is defined as less than 5 pounds, 8 ounces, than infants of other racial or ethnic groups. Does anyone have comments about this?
I'm kind of curious. I got a question. I don't have but this is something I wanted to ask. Okay, now with these statistics and stuff, all right, back in the day they had midwives and stuff like that that delivered the babies and stuff, as opposed to now babies are getting delivered in the hospital and they got all the prenatal care. So now are the statistics still high today as opposed to back then? Or what's the situation with that?
You know, that is an excellent question. So infants that are born with the assistance of midwives or mothers who go through their pregnancy with the support of doulas have a much better outcome than mothers that deliver in hospitals. I don't want to say mothers that have OBGYNs because I don't want to give a bad name to them. But the thing about OBGYNs are that they are surgeons. So they are more likely to perform surgery when they are delivering babies, which means that they're going to give C-sections. And C-sections are part of what Black women die from.
All right. Okay. All right. No.
So yeah, you're right. My great grandmother was a midwife. She delivered my mother, and she was back in the day. My mother was born in 1935, but back in the day in the South, my great grandmother was a how would you say famous midwife for that part of town. So she delivered a lot of babies. I can also say that I relate to the low birth weight statistic here in that when I was born, I was only 3.5 pounds. I was only 3.5 pounds. I spent the first month of my life in an incubator, and I was allowed to come home when I reached 5 pounds. So it happens. It didn't just happen back in the day, but it continues to happen this way today with all the advances in technology that we have.
Are these statistics different for different regions of the United States?
Some of the statistics I'm giving you are nationwide. So that first bit of information was nationwide. I am going to give you some California specific information, but again, even with this side, it's nationwide. Or rather, I should say it's nationwide unless it specifies a certain area.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a C-section with my firstborn, and then I ended up having a regular birth with my second, and they're like 14 months apart. And I was just really shocked, and like I delivered at Kaiser and San Leandro, and it was horrible. Like
it wasn't. What do you mean by horrible?
So it was an emergency C-section with my son, and just like the thought process of going through a C-section, I didn't know what was going on. And still to this day, from the first maybe 2 or 3 days I was in the hospital, I can't remember anything.
Oh.
Can't remember nothing.
Those drugs.
Yeah. And like you know, like anything could, like if my significant other, like my kid's dad, if he wasn't there and my mom wasn't there, like who would have, anything could have happened to me. Anything could have happened. And you know, like you always see the social media stuff like saying there, I know I followed a lady that she was saying like how she wasn't receiving treatment, and then come to find out when she gave birth she ended up dying. And so yeah, I don't remember. But then I was blessed to even have a regular birth with my daughter.
Yeah.
Because the doctor, for sure enough, she said that, no, you're probably gonna have another C-section and everything, but you know.
Did you go to a different doctor after that?
No, so I was going to Kaiser Union City and like getting regular checkups and stuff, but Kaiser and Leandro there were two different doctors. But
I'm so sorry.
Can I ask something? Can I put something else out there? All right, just use the example of the Sankofa. Go back and fetch, don't, you know, if we still having problems with modern medicine with the birth process, why not go back to some of that midwife stuff and stuff like? Why don't we come come up with a tradition to bring some of that stuff back? Does that make sense, or am I correct?
It does make sense.
it does.
And Black Infant Health is an organization. They have an office in San Francisco, and actually there's an office right across the street from me. I used to work with the one in San Francisco, and they have a program where they match doulas and midwives with women of color, expectant mothers, to help them through the process. And through the program, it's free. If you have to pay for it out of pocket, it costs a bit, but it's nothing in comparison to what you pay a hospital to deliver your baby.
Rousing, yeah.
That was. Thank you.
Sure, jump in anytime. So here's another bit of information. African American babies are born too small and too soon. They're born too small and too soon. And these babies have 2.3 times the infant mortality rates as non-Hispanic whites. We talked on Monday what the definition of a non-Hispanic white with Nurse Tina. So these babies, because their mothers are not given adequate care during their pregnancies, their diets may not be good. They could be stressed out. They could be depressed. And all the other social determinants could be working against them during their pregnancy. And these are the reasons why babies are born too small and too soon, because of the stress of the whole experience. Okay. Oops, I guess I got to put this down in order to move the screen. Okay. African American infants are 3.8 times as likely to die from complications related to low birth weight as compared to non-Hispanic white infants. Here's another thing. I don't know the sex of this baby. However, girls who are born underweight actually survive more often than boys do that are underweight, particularly African American.
Any studies about that?
There are studies about that. I will find one. I'm also gonna post another movie in the extras. It's called The Business of Being Born, which will show about, it makes the argument for doulas and midwives and having water births in a birthing facility as opposed to birthing in a hospital. It's better for, it's another option for women. Some women prefer the hospital experience, and whatever the mother is most comfortable with is what they should go with. But you should also be educated about whatever those risks with both might be. Okay. The business of being born acknowledges the risk with both, not just one.
So now with the stuff that we've been studying about the health disparities and, implied implicit biases and stuff like that, could that be a factor in this high infant mortality rate and stuff like that, the maternal stuff?
Of course.
So it's about, yeah, okay, all right.
We're going to talk more further about it, but absolutely.
So we need to make better decisions about what we do and where we go, right?
Well, Nurse Tina said, and this was not to be, this was not to be discriminatory in what she said.
Right.
Is find a physician that looks like you.
Okay. All right.
Find a physician that looks like you, because reports, there's also studies about that state that the outcomes for patients are much greater when the physician looks like the patient.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, here's a California statistic, but it also shows what those statistics are in comparison to the United States. So according to, and this came out of your book, according to the California Maternal Quality Care Collaborative, African Americans have the highest rates of infant mortality and adverse birth outcomes of all major racial ethnic groups in the United States. It's not a secret, but this information is not compiled in one place. You have to search for it.
I'm sure you do.
Once you are aware of it, it's your responsibility to pay attention and take heed.
There you go.
Okay? Okay, so here's more or some social determinants of health as defined by Healthy People 2000. Okay, so these are some of the things that impede just our ability to be healthy overall, not to mention impede the health of babies that are in utero and born into these situations. Economic stability, including employment, food insecurity, housing instability, and poverty, all contribute to our health outcomes. Education, or when it comes to education, early child education and development are extremely important. Enrollment in higher education, I think is very important. Some don't see the need for it because you can do well in life without going to college, but I think it's a good idea. Go ahead.
Okay, I thought earlier in this presentation you said something that didn't make any difference with the Black women, what their educational level was. They were still getting these same kind of results. So it's something other than the person's education or something like that. It's a real problem.
Right. So when I speak of education here, this is education for a person's own personal knowledge, but the statistic referred to degrees, like, or your high school diploma, your AA and bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees. The statistic related to that type of education. But we as individuals, whether we earn a degree or not, have to have a certain amount of knowledge in order to just be healthy, to survive, operate as an adult, you know.
Right.
Also part of the conversation around education is language and literacy, understanding what you read and being able to apply those concepts appropriately. It's important. And some language is written not a lot of language is written that is culturally sensitive. So if you are not aware of where the language came from, it's hard to interpret it the way in which it was intended to be interpreted. That makes sense?
Yeah. Nuances.
Yes. Okay, other determinants of health are social and community context, civil participation, very important. Oh, not civil, civic participation. Civic participation are things like voting. Okay, discrimination, incarceration, social cohesion. And when it comes to health and healthcare, access to healthcare or that being denied, access to primary care, being able to go to their primary care physician and get a diagnosis and be referred possibly to a specialist. Oftentimes that doesn't happen with patients of color. And again, health literacy is extremely important. If you don't understand the language of what maybe even a doctor has put on a prescription, the ways in which you should take a medication, if you don't understand the language, then you might not take the medication properly. And of course, your health suffers. Okay, the last determinant of health here is neighborhood and the built environment, access to food that support healthy eating patterns, crime and violence, environmental conditions, and quality of housing all affect people of color or people who don't have access to certain things. Okay. Questions or comments? Okay, these are some of the resources that, and I'm going to post this PowerPoint when we're done, but these are some of the resources that I pulled the information from. So the Black Infant Health Program, Black Mamas Matter, and the Health Equity Guide that is produced by Alameda County.
Are the slides, the PowerPoints in the modules?
I am going to post this when we are done. It's not yet in the module.
But the last week, for instance.
Yeah, well, the one with last week's, everything is up. The one with, from Monday with Nurse Tina, I'm still waiting for her resources. I don't want to put information there other than what she wanted to be there. So I'm trying not to, move forward without her information. So, but this one will be up as soon as we're done.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I want to move now to talking about just medicine and the questions for the required reading. All right. So the definition of health disparities, according to Dana Bowen Matthew of Just Medicine, is it's unconscious racial and ethnic bias that infects our delivery system or our healthcare delivery system. And I should also mention here that a 2009 report by the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies estimated that eliminating health disparities would have reduced direct medical care expenditures by 29.4 billion and indirect costs due to illness and premature death by approximately 1 trillion during the years of 2003 to 2006. So the actual numbers of how many died, I didn't find consistency in those numbers, but I would rather focus in on this number to show the how skewed it actually is. To have to spend rather the amount of money that could have been saved as opposed to giving us proper health care. They'd rather be in this quandary instead of just doing the right thing, is what I'm saying. And it's ludicrous to me.
Insane.
It's absolutely ludicrous to me.
So that's maintaining the status quo costs them money, right? And other people their lives.
Yes, but as far as they're concerned, it's a good investment.
Wow.
So,
That's sick.
you know,
Yes.
the social determinants of health that are outlined in the book, they're namely economic and social conditions, but they also cover systemic and organizational contributors. So the economic and social conditions that are outlined are poverty, inferior education, segregated housing, which still happens today, lack of access to healthy food choices, and recreational facilities. In certain areas, the centers that would provide clean basketball courts or tennis courts or things for the community to take advantage of to keep themselves healthy. The number of those in poor neighborhoods is just slim or non-existent. But you go into other affluent areas and beautiful parks, play areas. They poll the people who live in those areas and find what they want and make sure that those things erect in the community. It's amazing.
Yeah.
When it comes to systemic and organizational contributors, medical practice settings can be an issue. Source of insurance, if you cannot afford top insurance, you might be judged or it might be drudged based on the type of insurance you have, and geographic proximity to care. If you don't have adequate transportation to get to the doctor or don't have money for adequate transportation, that might limit your choices of where to go to get care. All right. So those were the two questions from the introduction that I wanted to capture. And there's another 8 questions that relate to chapter 1, and let's walk through that. So the first question, according to Dana Bowe and Matthew, what are the 4 chronological periods in American history when law and health intersect? I'm going to tell you what the periods are. I want you all to tell me what those, where law and health intersect. So during the colonial period, what happened?
Oh.
I'll say.
Well, if they had any law, it was called reckless, and they kind of wiped out the Indian population, and and I think they delivered blankets with disease on them. That's what I've heard more than one time. So it wasn't about other people's health at all. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And then actually, I don't see how you can separate the periods. It's an ongoing thing.
It is an ongoing thing, but the purpose of this is to understand how the dots were connected. What events happened first to kick off these events? What events are happening today that look exactly like the events that happened back in the colonial period and then the first half of the 20th century? And again, even the civil rights era, all of those things are still happening today. They might not be called the same thing, but they're still happening.
Yes.
So, referring to the reading, what are those things, those events where health and law intersect?
According to the reading, it says the slave codes and the land grants, because it took over pretty much and like it disregarded humans and making it so it was theirs. Like it was just wiping out humans as their own, like at their own will, kind of a thing.
Yes.
That it says straight up, laws equated that status of minorities as little more than livestock.
Isn't that horrible?
And the 3/5 doctrine also, I remember, 3/5 doctrine.
Yeah. I want everyone to please read the book, because the purpose of this course is to connect the dots. Don't go on what you know. Allow the book to help you connect the dots.
Okay.
Because the class is only 5 weeks. This is week 2. And at the very end, we're going to write bills. So I don't want you to go by, and a lawyer wrote the book.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I don't want you to go on your own understanding. I really want you to follow what's here.
All right.
All right. So what about the first half of the 20th century? What was happening then?
We had the wars, and both major wars was in the first half of the 20th century. And Jim Crow. And Jim Crow didn't give a damn about black folks. And kept trying to keep black folks in the colonial period status. Actually, it was Klansmen and all of that made sure that if you try to get out of the so-called box, that you were going to be terrorized, lynched, or ran out of your area. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Terrorism.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone? Thank you, Mr. Jones. I appreciate that.
I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let some other people do something. But
I don't know. It was mad. I appreciate that.
It touches anger.
I believe you mean. Can't you see my face? I do not have a poker face. Sometimes I just
don't play no poker. Don't play poker.
Maybe I should just turn my video off when I'm going through stuff, but
go through
definitely incites a lot of emotion in me.
Right.
Okay. So what about the civil rights era?
It's segregated health systems, or they're trying to dismantle it, but it was still like the separate but equal shit. But that's pretty much like what I got from it.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true. And the fourth period is today. What's happening today that you see reflected in the previous periods? What's happening today?
The same thing.
What?
Um, like, you know, it's the same thing. History repeats itself, unfortunately, in this case, you know, and from the cops to just, I know everybody's been seeing the videos on social media being repeated, how others are being treated. Restaurants, people go into restaurants and their black kid is dressing exactly like the white kid.
Oh, I
They're
saw
able
that
to
this morning.
Yeah, they're able to eat there, but then the manager or whatever who's on duty, he's having a complaint about the little boy wearing the same thing. But they're leaving, but they can't come sit down and eat.
Yeah, he said, so do you live very far away? Can your son just go home and change? And the other little boy was maybe, 20 feet from him, dressed exactly the same way? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then my thing is, I know, like, say they weren't that far apart. I know the mom of the white kid probably heard some of it, to the point where she probably didn't say anything. She probably didn't step in or try to, you know, to help the situation. She probably just looked the other way. But I just,
Like, that's just not my business.
right.
But these are children, and to do the right thing in front of your child and someone else's child would have been the adult thing to do.
Exactly. It's not about race. It's just in general.
It would have been the adult thing to do.
Yeah.
So man, I'm surprised I don't have just a little red face. Maybe that's what I'll put up instead of being on here live, because it brings a lot out.
Well, and to me, I'm sure the kids didn't have a problem with that, being dressed similarly. Why would you know what I'm talking about? The kids probably would have got a kick out of it, but then also you made the kids aware of some tension and stress that, hey, what's really going on, right? Or what's the lesson that you're teaching the kids also? It's a whole lot of stuff. And then it perpetuates this keeps the engine rolling. The train keeps rolling down the track.
Again, if you don't want your child to be upset by something, why would you impose that on anyone else's child? Children are children. It shouldn't be about race.
Thank you.
What was the kid wearing?
He was wearing athletic wear.
Athletic wear. It was like a Nike t-shirt with no crazy slogan on it, and athletic pants, tennis shoes, and socks.
Yep, literally a t-shirt that said Air Jordan on it and some shorts. And then you look over at the white kid, literally a t-shirt and some shorts.
Shoes and socks. Same thing. Same length shorts. I mean, there was literally no difference. Okay, so the Dred Scott case, provided protection to colonial slave owners, guaranteeing not only their financial ownership rights, but also their right to treat enslaved Africans inhumanely. That was the Dred Scott case.
I was a little confused. That's what I read. However, it's saying Dred Scott was trying to not have that. He was the one that was all like, no, my family is free and I'm not gonna allow this. Is that not? Because I kind of did some I Googled it or whatever, because I was I was reading other people's response and I was like, I got this wrong. So I had to rephrase it.
Well, I can't blame you for the bad information that's out there. I can only encourage you to find the answers to these questions in the text or in the book that I assigned. But so often, even Black people get it wrong because the information out there is not correct or it's conflicting.
Thank you.
Okay, Black codes. Black codes were labor laws that were crafted during the antebellum period to keep freed slaves subordinated immediately after the Civil War and to regulate all aspects of their lives, from voting rights, education, and jury service to marriage and religious assembly. Another thing I want to say about your answers to these questions. Again, I want you to stick to just medicine to answer these questions, so we're all coming from one source. But the answer to some of these questions, as you will see in the next slides, I want it to come from your experience rather than simply what it says on the internet or even what the way in which it's described in this book. Implicit bias is something that in this book was explained from the very beginning all the way up into where we are right now in chapter 3. Implicit bias is nearly the core of this whole manuscript. So, but the way in which you've experienced implicit bias is also important to note. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I got it. Okay. I used to drive trucks right before I developed diabetes. And generally, you could go pre-employment when you go get your pre-employment physical, right? Around here in the Bay Area, right, East Bay, used to send you to this place. It was in San Leandro. And I went over there, you know, because you moved around a lot, you know, doing stuff. And I went over there. And the guy that usually what the doctor would do is say, you're on medication and you're eating, or you're trying to handle it with diet and exercise. So this guy, he's one of those other people. He sent a thing to, I'm gonna tell you, the real story was this. I was gonna go to Katrina after they had the problem down there. And I went over to ask for my medical records because I needed something out of my medical records. And for me to ask for the medical records, which is, I have a right to do that, created a situation. And so they wouldn't give them to me. And they kept asking me, what do you need the medical records for? And my response to that was, do I have to tell you what I need my medical records for to get a copy of my medical records? And so what happened was I had to capitulate and tell them what it was for. So what happened was they called down to Louisiana. I had already been hired because the check had been set out here with transportation money and everything. And whatever they said down there from the people here, whatever they said down there killed my job. And so, all right, that's not the end of it. The next, like I said, I was driving trucks, so I had to go back to the take a pre-employment test there again. And so now I had the diabetes, thing. So he sent the information to DMV. They were sending my driver's license, so I couldn't make a living. So that's what kind of preceded me starting my own business. But the whole fact is, as a human being, as a person, one thing, I couldn't go ask about my I never did get the records. So getting the medical records created a problem. All right. And being a black man, how come I just couldn't go ask for my records and you give them to me like my right? And we had to go through all of this, and he used the information to call, and whatever he said down there cost me the job. And so the next time I go down there to get cleared for a job, he finds out I have diabetes, and he sends that information to DMV in Sacramento. And the next thing I know, they pull in my driver's license. It's almost like what the fuck is going on? I'm taking medication, excuse my language. I'm taking medications and stuff like that. Why would you deny me a right to make a living? This is the second time at the same place. So what does it end? I got 1,000 little stories like that. I'm lucky I'm still alive. But the whole point is, and that's about trying to survive and go through this stuff. Keep going through it over and over and over. It takes a toll. But anyway, that's the experience. I mean, you know, one thing after another all the time.
I understand, and I go through. I have similar stories myself. But I can say that HIPAA laws were enacted in 1996. So in 2005, that time in which you're talking about when Hurricane Katrina happened, the law was at least 9 years old at that point. So there should have been no reason why your rights were withheld, why your records were withheld.
Well, I mean, do you have to have a lawyer and go through litigation for everything?
No, that's the whole reason for the law being in place, to give you that right to your medical records and to protect you from them being made public or being accessed by an employer. Your spouse cannot even access your own personal medical records, not while you're alive.
All right. Well, I was just trying to share something about it. Always brings up some real stuff that when we get to talking about it.
So yeah, and oftentimes the law's protection isn't even enough. I totally understand what you're saying. But again, you have to be aware, we all have to be aware of what those laws are. So you shouldn't have taken you having to get a lawyer to say,
well, I didn't get a lawyer
HIPAA, for you to just quote HIPAA.
Well, I mean, that was just something I went through, and I was trying. You can't keep. I have to keep moving. You have to keep moving to keep the roof over your head, food in your stomach, and all of that kind of stuff. And so you just try to keep moving. I never had time to follow the litigation route. It's just the way it is, you know.
Yeah.
You
and
asked
bank
about
on that.
I just had to share that. You asked about it. Personal.
They bank on that.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Right.
So the sixth question, also question 6 through 10 related to chapter 1. Question number 6, in May 1900, the San Francisco Board of Health adopted a resolution requiring only the city's 2,500 Chinese residents to do something to prevent the spread of the bubonic plague. Well, here what that something is. They asked them to submit to inoculation with a dangerous serum called half-keen prophylactic or suffer quarantine. All right. So certain groups of people, not just Black people, but people of color, are targeted all the time, and their rights are violated or withheld. And it's always unfortunate, no matter who it's happening to, it's always unfortunate. Question number 7 asks to explain the Hospital Survey and Construction Act, also known as the Hill-Burton Act. Earlier when you spoke, Melissa, you were referring to the Hill-Burton Act, or what resulted from the Hill-Burton Act, okay? And it read, to provide federal funding for hospital construction and modernization after World War II. And under the act, the U.S. government contributed over $4.2 billion in public funds to build and upgrade hospitals while protecting segregation policies, also known as the separate but equal provisions, as you were talking about. And it wasn't until 1979 that litigants in Cook versus Ochsner Foundation Hospitals was the law revised to eliminate that separate but equal provision, or that separate but equal clause. Okay, so the hospitals that were being modernized were dedicated or reserved for caring for white people. And the dilapidated hospitals were reserved for people of color, just to make it plain. So it wasn't until 1979 their reason to, well, they were denying Medicare patients certain services. That's why this even went to court. So Medicare patients earn the right to be in hospitals and receive care at the same level as people who were affluent or white. All right, any questions about that or comments? All right, describe the Simpkins versus Moses H. Memorial Hospital case. So this case was a landmark case, and it was 6 African-American physicians, 3 African-American dentists, and 2 African-American patients sued collectively to raise the 5th and the 14th Amendments, challenges to the constitutionality of 2 defendant hospitals, segregation policies, that separate but equal policy, a provision in those policies, and also to challenge Congress's exercise of its pending power under the Hill-Burton Act. It was declared that racial discrimination by hospital visits severe consequences upon Negro physicians and their patients. Yeah. So that was the case that really changed things for when it came to segregation in hospitals. Because not only were the patients being discriminated against, but the doctors as well. Doctors could not practice in those hospitals. Okay, so now I want to hear from you all. What is unconscious racism? What is unconscious racism? Let's hear from Makai or Isabella. Nothing? You guys don't know what unconscious racism is?
Hi, my name is Isabella.
Hi.
I'm working, but I'm listening in.
I appreciate that.
Yes. For me, unconscious racism is, it's kind of a sticky situation because when I hear racism, I just feel like you have to know what you're doing, you know? It's like, it's just common sense for me, but I feel like it's kind of oblivious and you don't realize like the hurt you're causing other people. And it's just kind of normal for you and you don't realize like what you're doing subconsciously.
So your book says that it is unconscious and
Sorry, I think you're breaking up or my connection.
no, I just stopped talking because of the.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay. That's okay. It says that unconscious racism is not only unconscious, but it's unintentional. So they may not mean to hurt you, but they should be aware of the power of language, the power of their words.
Exactly.
Thank you, Isabella. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments on unconscious racism?
I want to piggyback off what she said. Like, I just don't understand how somebody could really just like say racist comments or say racist things without like
Realizing they're racist?
Yeah. And then I really struggle with that. And I can admit that, like how I just find it so hard. But then again, like kind of putting, like, I guess being in their footsteps, that's might what they've grown up with, to the point where they don't even realize that they're doing it. They've probably been around it their whole life. But then it goes back to being like, you're more, it's like, you know what's right from wrong. So I just have a hard time
You are
understanding
preaching to the choir,
racism.
Andrea.
Huh?
I said you preaching to the choir. It's a conversation that I find difficult to revisit with the same people over and over. I can have the conversation and probably will have the conversation until the day I die. I'm okay with that. But if I'm having the same conversation with the same people, that makes me angry.
Yes, because it's not, that means they're not either learning, they're not understanding, or they just simply don't care.
They don't care. They don't, in my opinion, they don't care. A lot of them don't. Let me put that up. In my opinion.
Until something happens that threatens them or puts the spotlight on them, then they're willing to have another conversation with you. But it doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to change. I just have to say that.
So
that's the danger, I'm sorry, of unconscious racism. Because who we are and how we think is locked in here. And this is a very, very strong muscle. It has memory. So it's hard.
You know, when I took this class, I didn't know we was going to be going down this road.
Me neither.
Of course. This class is supposed to make you think. Not just during this 5 weeks. It's supposed to make you think from now on and challenge from now on and to vote from now on. If you don't currently vote, vote. I'm going to say that every class.
This is a question, a serious question. Has voting made a difference so far? We still have to get out in the streets and cut up to get any kind of recognition. So how much has voting made it? I mean, what is voting really did?
I'm not going to argue the point, but I am going to say that I exercise my vote every opportunity I get from age 18 until today. And I am going to walk to the polls.
I'm not saying,
regardless of what's going on, and cast my vote in November.
You know what? That's your right, and I support that. It's just, it doesn't really matter for, they find a way around it. It don't change.
I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about doing my civic duty. That's what I'm worried about, because that pacifies me.
I mean, I'm not trying to be critical in any, I was a question, that was an open-ended question. Has it made any difference?
Okay, Mr. Jones, I'm saying it does make a difference. That's why I continue to do it. Okay. I don't do it just to make the next person angry to see me with my I voted sticker on.
Okay, it's a belief. It's a belief.
Yeah, it's a belief.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, Jim, because it goes to like, they started saying that we can mail in ballots. Then it goes to, now mail-in ballots are disappearing from different races or whatever the case is. I see there's pros and cons to the situation.
There's trickery every election, whether it is a primary or a major election, it doesn't matter.
And then maybe the number one thing, yes, we need to vote, but also there's other things that needs to be done. You know, like I get what you're saying, but then also I think voting is definitely like the top thing.
I think the efforts that are put forth to keep us from voting is the reason why I vote. So that's just my position.
All right, I got
That's the reason why I vote. Yeah. Because you do everything humanly possible to deny my vote. So therefore, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to cast that vote.
There you go.
Period.
I understand. I respect.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm just yelling.
I'm not. Hey, I'm not taking it like that.
You know,
I'm not taking.
yelling.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Explicit bias is overt racism. It's undeniable. It's not soft. It's hard. It's in your face. Where implicit bias is different. We don't have to go through this question since we have touched on it several different times, but if you have any more to add to it, I appreciate that.
Yeah, the Tuskegee syphilis study that was done at what was the Black HBCU? What we call
Tuskegee?
Yeah, Tuskegee. Now that was dirty, but it was an explicit bias to them that gave them in that disease and didn't treat them, just studied them untreated to 1972. From 1940, I believe it was 1944 to 1972. And no telling how many people they infected, the family members and all of that kind of stuff. And they let that go on. We need reparations for all of the stuff that they did, threw down and stuff like that. That was dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond dirty.
Yeah.
It was beyond dirty.
Diabolical.
To infect people with something and watch them die just so you can document what it might do to other groups of people.
Right. All right.
Now.
Yeah.
Come on now.
You can go back to the blankets, I'm talking about way back there. Yeah.
But again, I want to encourage you all to read this book.
I want to read it.
Huh?
I won't read it, but I don't have high blood pressure yet, but it's yeah.
No, you know what? What education does is it helps when the dots are connected, which is what education does. It actually helps to quiet your mind because you understand you have an answer. You might not have a resolution, but you have the answers and you have events clear in your mind. So you're not just attacked by the emotion related to these events. You understand what the event is. And that makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference. So I don't want to pose anything negative to your health or anyone's.
No, that was just I was kind of putting it on a little bit. I was stretching it a little bit, but it brings up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'll take it back to, I watched Roots when I was in the 5th grade. You talking about stress. I was 10 when Roots came out. And we sat down as a family, my mother, father, and my 4 brothers sat down and watched that together and talked about it as a family afterwards.
Right.
So I totally understand what you're talking about, but it's necessary in order to make sense of all of these emotions that we have trapped in our bodies. Doesn't mean you won't get angry, but at least I'll understand the anger.
Yeah. Let me talk about, can I just mention one thing about adaptive affectation? Does that make sense? All right. I remember one, not long ago, maybe a year ago or something like that. I'm walking, I think I'm going to a store. I see a white lady coming up to this, I guess she was going to the same place I was. And I could see on her face when she saw me that she started feeling uncomfortable. I stopped and allowed her to go into the, to give her time so she could go and get into this, I feel like she got safely into the store or whatever. But I had to question myself. Why did I have to stop to make her feel comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And so that bothers me. Like, Jim, what is wrong with you? Are you adapting to this madness? What is it? It's not up to. It wasn't my responsibility to make her feel comfortable or allow her to feel safer or something like that. Because I didn't have no intent. I didn't have no malevolent intent. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just something that sometimes you have to deal with as a black man in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah,
it bothers me. Was that something wrong with the way I responded to that situation, right?
no. Well, yeah, it's wrong, but it comes from internalized oppression. We tend, like you said, we adapt what other people believe about us. We adapt it, believe it ourselves.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I experience it a lot, where I might look out for or be concerned with what might happen to X person that I see on the street, worried about how my presence might impact them. Why should I care? But it's because of internalized oppression. Once you're aware of it, then you don't have to be bothered by it anymore. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Now that I have a term for it, now that I understand what it is,
Internalized.
Internalized oppression.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry to bring that up, but anyway.
This is your class, Mr. Jones.
All right.
And like everybody in here, if you want to bring something up, please bring it up. That's why we have this time to meet live. Right. I don't think this information would have the same energy if you just read it. So that's why the class is not self-paced, but it's not self-paced for a reason.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When it comes to the quiz, the first quiz, 13. Okay. I want to discuss these questions, the answers to these questions. I will put up the actual answers to the questions over the weekend, because there's a couple of students that haven't yet taken the quiz. And for that reason, I don't want to put up the answers. I can't hear you, Melissa.
Did a shitty job. Okay, but anyway.
Yeah, girl. So who wants to address the first question? Nobody? You guys angry?
Always and forever.
Girl, don't be angry, be educated.
And that's like me, like taking this class, like I literally jumped back into school. And so like just this alone and watching the 13th educated me so much. Like I am ashamed because I'm not educated like I wanted to be, as far as like my race and all like the background behind it and stuff. But this was like, I don't know. I told you some days I have words and then some days I don't have the words, and today I don't have the words.
Yeah.
But and the whole thing with Alec and then once I was watching and everything, I was like texting people like, did you know about Alec and this and that? And it was just like, it was blowing my mind, like this was going on. But like, I can't even be shocked. It's because it's always something.
It's always something. But to know, that's the whole reason why we're going to do bills at the end, because of Alec, because of their efforts. That's the reason why we're doing bills at the end. There's been an organization in place for the last 40 years to build, I can't hear you, Melissa, to,
it's because I said I'm a Karen. I'm sorry.
Where legislators are members of this organization, and they help to create laws that protect us from having certain rights. And I don't just mean Black people, I mean people of color. I mean people of color. So you don't think we need bills that are written by us and for us? Of course we do. Okay, so what do you have to say about the Southern strategy? Anyone?
Someone that got 100% should answer these.
I will say that the Southern strategy, without giving away everything, it was a strategy that was not developed by Nixon and his running mate. It was used by them in order to win the election. And it was in response to them just needing to take, the Republicans needing to take the government back.
What I understood by it is the fact that they took the government back by taking even like poor and Democratic votes. Is that not?
Yeah, so they ran a fear campaign to get many Southern identified Democrats to switch parties and to help to vote them into office. Yeah. Any other comments about that?
Please, someone.
Nobody has to respond. I'm just asking before I move on. So when it comes to ALEC, when it comes to you could respond to who Alex is as a body, but I also want you to respond to the SB 1070 or the Show Me Your Papers law.
Off the hook. Wait, some people still haven't taken the test, right? You said?
Yeah, but it's good. Go ahead.
Okay. It was basically allowing law enforcement to go ahead and pull over or address someone or arrest them if they look like an immigrant. And Alec is political individuals and also corporates, and they basically make laws to go ahead and use it to their advantage, basically. Like they sit there, create these laws, and then the political party later uses it, and then you have other companies also involved. Walmart. What was the three? It was the Aramark, the telephone company for the inmates at the jails and stuff. Mm-hmm. They're all making profit from them, and but yeah.
They make a lot of money. So the part of the draw of the organizations or the companies to be members of ALEC is the shares, you know?
Yeah.
And the payout. So yeah, we can talk about the answers. Our talk is not going to be posted before the next people take the test. I just don't want to put it in writing, so I'm going to post this as soon as we're done. So the answers won't be on this. Okay, so the images of Black people or even people of color who have been, their rights have been violated. They were either beaten or lynched, killed, fire hosed, attacked by dogs, so on and so forth. What do those images do to a person of color when they're shown? And I should say that oftentimes it's people of color who are posting these images. They have a purpose. They have a purpose.
To educate folks and to let them know what was going on, what we were going through, and how it's still traumatizing to this day, because it might not be we're getting whipped in the back or we're not bending over to go ahead and pull crops and everything, but now we're getting shot in the back. So it's the same thing.
Documentation.
Yeah. And being exposed.
You can look at it as a fear campaign, but it's a fear campaign of truths. You know, not a fear campaign that's created by trickery.
How's it? Okay, can I ask you? Can you clarify about how, a fear campaign of truth? What I mean.
Well, if I show, I'm sorry. You want to go ahead, Melissa?
Cool.
Because it says metaphorical black rapist. That is definitely not truth.
Yeah,
it's not true, but the being whipped is true.
Yeah.
The lynchings are true. Emmett Till's open casket is true.
Yes.
Okay.
Fire hose.
So the Willie Horton symbol was used as part of an ad, a campaign ad.
Get tough on
also
crime.
A fear campaign. So Willie Horton did commit these crimes. He was a felon, as well as Luis Bracamontes. They both were felons. But it's unfair to use those images to blanket a whole race of people. That was their purpose, to make you look at Black men in that way, in the way in which Willie Horton was depicted, as well as Luis Bracamontes. So I'll give you a better example. On the news, there was a clip of two boys. They were toddlers, maybe 1, 2 years old. They were best friends, one white, one black. And it showed after they had not seen each other for a while due to the coronavirus, when they saw each other again, they were so happy. They ran towards each other, hugged each other. They're smiling, laughing, okay? So that was the first images that were released. Then they have more footage of the boys, one kind of running behind the other. So it's the white boy running and the black boy running behind him to catch up. But Trump used that in an ad to talk about the white kid being afraid of the black kid. So that's what I mean by some are true and some are just used to
Like
incite fear in people in order to get something.
Manipulate the truth.
Manipulate.
That goes back to the Southern strategy.
Of course. Of course. And I'm telling you that those same types of strategies, even though it's not a Southern strategy, that same strategy has been used today. Just because you can say that something is a part of history doesn't mean that it's not happening today.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. It you know, it's the morphed and all of that got sophisticated and all that whole 9 yards, but it's still it hasn't changed. And you know, with all of the unrest that we done went through lately, I just think it's going to die down, and then it's going to be some pushback. It's always some pushback, but I'm not tripping on it. I'm not scared of no pushback or nothing like that. But it'll be life as usual. You know, you have to go back to the same kind of life again, and we'll have to, at some point in the future, we'll have to do it again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right. How can we change that? How can we stop going through that same old thing? Keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different results. It's called what?
Education.
Insanity.
Oh, okay.
No, insanity.
Expecting a different results is called what?
Insanity.
All right.
Go on and teach and preach, Mr. Jones. I appreciate it.
But then again, you got to keep on living, right?
You have to.
So you have to find a way to cope and deal, right?
Right.
Okay.
But you have to find healthy coping mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Oh.
You can have them, but they can be unhealthy.
Right.
So I hope I you know, like I've been sick for a while, and I was hoping that this is a way of learning some coping strategies, right?
It's just Donna's way. That's all.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Donna's way.
All right.
All right. Question 4. Okay. In the 13th Amendment, or the 13th Amendment states neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime thereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So they're saying that it's illegal to hold anyone in servitude except criminals. Nobody should be in servitude. The protection does not apply to anyone in the prison system. Prisons are a modern day racial caste system that are in business to make profits for their shareholders. You have to understand that. It's a business that money is made off of every day. There are more than 2.3 million inmates. Black males account for 40.2. Well, I'm sorry, that's my daddy. 40.2%. Moreover, 1.3 young Black males will be imprisoned in their lifetime. If you are a poor person of color, prison can be a one-way in, no way out reality. It is not designed for you to make it through the system. The system is designed to keep you in there once you're in. So if you're poor, you're going to have a hard time getting out. Okay. The prison industrial complex directly impacts the social determinants of health of inmates. It grants long-term, multi-billion-dollar contracts to companies such as Seguros Technologies, Aramark, and Horizon Healthcare. So what did Seguros Technologies do?
Up their prices on the inmates' phone call and then their families. And then that goes back to having the 40.2% Black males in there and most likely low and in poverty. And then it was saying something about the minimum wage. I forget the actual statistic, but basically they had to work so many hours in order to even have a 10-minute phone call with whoever's in the jail.
They have to work an hour and a half to earn a 10-minute phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about Seguros? Okay, what about Aramark?
Aramark provides the food, I believe, right? The food, and you know, I imagine they cost them. I mean, they got big contracts with you know, and they probably nationwide. You know, as any corporation, the thing is to grow and to make money, and so they make a profit for the investors, or else they wouldn't have been around this long. That's for sure.
Well, definitely they make a profit, but the documentary said specifically certain things that they did.
Oh.
There was maggots in their food.
Maggots in the food. Expired food, maggots in the food. Come on. Okay, so what about Horizon Healthcare? How did they contribute to the social determinants?
Okay, well, the social determinants. Okay, even inside the jail, there's inmates are not being treated very well if they get sick or whatever. They get inadequate care all the time. A lot of the inmates are mental patients, either from being in prison or before they was in prison, they was off their medication and they did something that got them in the system. And so they're not being properly medicated and stuff like that. And then we can go back to, why are they being punished if their problem is mental as opposed to criminal, all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that the healthcare in the prisons is atrocious.
Okay, so many of them were denied medications as you mentioned. Many of them were under-medicated when they did have medications that were administered by the nursing staff. And the worst of the issues had to do with them being denied surgeries or treatments for life-sustaining treatment given to those with cancer or another chronic illness. So they were allowed to die, basically. They were allowed to suffer and die.
Yep, and then the company still got paid for it.
And they still got paid for it. The denials made no difference in their ability to maintain that contract. So they might get a 7 to 10 year contract and they're locked in that. They're locked in as the provider for that amount of time without question. And the enforcer behind that again was ALEC.
You know who else was one of the corporations that invested in prison? Victoria's Secret and J.C. Penney's.
Oh yeah, so they get a lot off of the labor.
Right. Oh yeah, they make the clothes and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay, the very last question. So we have 5 minutes left. Okay. So, does everyone know what qualified immunity is? I would take that as a no.
No, I say no.
Okay. Okay, so qualified immunity is what officers are allowed, if you will. They're allowed to, they were allowed prior to the laws that are coming out now, or they were allowed to institute chokeholds. They were allowed to they were allowed to use force that killed someone, possibly, if they said that their lives were in danger. So, and not be prosecuted for it. So when we see so many officers and they get off, it's because of qualified immunity.
Right.
Because it's a clause for them to not be, to not go to jail for doing certain things. They say it's part of their job.
Yeah, well, if a guy is running away from you and he ain't got no gun, and you fear for your life and you shoot him in the back 3-4 times and stuff like that, then you qualify for immunity by just saying, I fear for my life. And
right.
Which is
so again, we see it happen all the time, but this is the term that this is how it's termed, rather.
Right. And then you know, it's gotten to the point where if you're a black man, they can kill you on camera now, and without with impunity. You know, it don't hardly mean nothing. We had that stuff with Floyd. It had to raise all of that hell for the law officer to get arrested. And, you know, and the case is not over now. I mean, but after, you know, things that go back down, he probably won't be, you know, he won't probably get no time or nothing like that.
We're hoping this will be a landmark case for this as well, for this issue. We're hoping for that.
I hope so. They really down. I mean, I don't know what the black, I've had women, girlfriends and stuff like that I couldn't talk to about some of the experiences I had. Especially I've had some educated women too and stuff like that. They really don't want to hear it. They wanted to stay in their little bubble. And and then sometimes I think, well, maybe black women don't go through discrimination and stuff. I started thinking that. And, you know, like, because it makes them upset, angry, they don't want to hear it. It makes, for sometimes you can perceive them to perceive you as being weak if you have to kind of vent about some of the things that you go through in your life. And so it's something that I sometimes, y'all, you know, by me taking this course, you don't open up a lot of stuff, you know, to go through all of this and to talk about it. It's stuff that I guess I needed to talk about a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad we.
And we're not socialized to talk about it, you know. And then, like I said, I've had earlier in my life, I had a alcohol problem. I used to just go on and do John Wayne thing, go take me a drink and stuff, and, you know, hit the bar and all that kind of stuff. But that hurt. But anyway, now to try to learn how to process some of the stuff that a black man might go through on a daily basis, and then some of the stuff that I've been through, some of the stuff I see all the time. And so, and y'all just bringing all of this out of me. And I apologize for being a little bit vociferous, but
you know, I think everybody will be a little bit different at the end of this 5 weeks.
All right.
But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you everybody for the patience, and I appreciate y'all.
I think it's important because I'm not sure if you do have an outlet for that, for that, what you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate anything that you may talk about, because I'm also learning from it, and also learn being with my boyfriend. He may not have that outlet. I might not be that outlet for him, unfortunately.
Right.
But I know what's going on. I know he feels like he's a target. I know he's 6'4", 200-something pounds. He intimidates people, and so I'm learning from you. So I may need to hear something that you are experiencing just so I can hear it. And because me and him are close, I may not understand it, or I may not even think of anything.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandrea. All right, wonderful people. I hope you have a good weekend, but before we leave, the quiz for American circumcision opens tomorrow at 12, and it will stay open until Friday at midnight. American circumcision is not, the focus of it is not Black people, but it's important to talk about the subject, and we will do so next week.
All right.
Good day, and I will see you all next week.
One more question.
Yes.
Okay, you said the quiz opens tomorrow.
Yes.
Where's the material that we're supposed to study for the quiz?
So do you go to modules?
I go over there all the time, but I don't. Okay, is there something?
If you go to modules, it's module 2, week 2. Got the date on it.
When does it open? Is it open now?
Yeah, the film is open. The quiz opens tomorrow at 12.
So when did the film open? Today?
Last night.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. I'm sorry.
I opened it with the other materials that I posted last night.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All of the films are up there, but this is not a self-paced course. I want you to do things kind of at a certain pace so you understand where I'm going with it.
Okay.
This is not a, let me just check this off and get it done kind of class.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
No, okay. Thank you.
All right. All right, lovelies.
Yeah, have a good day. I used to be pretty in the face and thin in the waist.
My uncle used to say that all the time.
But you know what he was talking about, right?
Yes.
All right. All right. Y'all have a good one.
You too.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.